The Judgment Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by living hands. It floated at the center of the galaxy, a massive station that could hold 1 billion souls, and today every seat was filled. Representatives from 847 species sat in rings that rose toward a ceiling painted with the light of captured stars. They had come from every corner of known space to witness something that happened only once in 1,000 years. A new species was being judged. Ambassador David Cole stood at the center of the hall, feeling the weight of 1 trillion eyes upon him. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and a calm face that revealed nothing. Behind him stood 4 other humans, the entire diplomatic team that Earth had sent to represent their species. 5 humans. 5 ordinary people standing before the combined might of galactic civilization. The silence was absolute. High Chancellor Mordrith rose from his throne at the top of the chamber. He was a creature of ancient power, his body a mass of shifting shadows wrapped in ceremonial robes that had been worn by his predecessors for 50,000 years. When he spoke, his voice echoed through translation devices that converted his words into every language in the galaxy. "Humanity," he said, the word dripping with contempt. "You stand before this council, accused of crimes against galactic law. You have expanded beyond your permitted boundaries. You have developed weapons that exceed your authorization level. You have refused to pay tribute to the species that granted you the right to exist among the stars." David Cole did not move, did not blink. "The penalty for these crimes is clear," Mordrith continued. "Your species will be reduced. Your colonies will be absorbed. Your fleet will be destroyed. And your homeworld, the planet you call Earth, will be placed under permanent council supervision." A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. This was how it always went. Young species rose, forgot their place, and were crushed back down. The galaxy had order. The galaxy had rules. And the council enforced those rules with absolute power. "You may speak in your defense," Mordrith said, settling back into his throne. "Though I warn you, nothing you say will change the outcome. This council has already decided your fate." David Cole looked up at the High Chancellor. Then he did something that no species had ever done in the history of the Judgment Hall. He laughed. The sound was soft at first, almost gentle, but it carried through the perfect acoustics of the chamber and reached every ear. Representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Mordrith's shadows flickered with confusion. "I appreciate the warning," David said, his voice calm and clear. "But I think there has been a misunderstanding. We are not here to defend ourselves." "Then why are you here?" Mordrith demanded. "To deliver a message." David reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. It was simple, almost primitive by galactic standards. Just a black rectangle with a single button. "Earth Command, this is Ambassador Cole. Authorization Omega. Execute." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then every display screen in the Judgment Hall flickered and changed. The captured starlight on the ceiling went dark, and a new image appeared, projected across every surface, visible to every species in the chamber. It was a map of the galaxy. And it was wrong. The Council's territory was shown in blue, just as it should be. But scattered throughout that blue, like drops of blood in an ocean, were thousands of red points. They surrounded Council worlds. They sat along every major trade route. They clustered around the Judgment Hall itself. "What is this?" Mordrith rose from his throne, his shadow form expanding with rage. "What trick is this?" "No trick," David said. "Just the truth. Those red points are human installations, military bases, hidden colonies, weapons platforms. We have been building them for 300 years, ever since we first made contact with your civilization." The chamber erupted. Species that had been silent for millennia screamed in outrage. Others began to flee toward the exits. The guards surrounding the human delegation raised their weapons, ready to fire. David Cole raised his hand, and every guard froze. Not from fear. Their bodies simply stopped moving, locked in place by technology they could not see or understand. "We came to you 3 centuries ago as children," David continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We pretended to be weak. We pretended to be stupid. We accepted your insults and your demands and your abuse because we needed time. Time to learn. Time to grow. Time to build." He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire assembly. "You taught us well. We studied your technology and improved it. We mapped your defenses and found their weaknesses. We learned your languages, your cultures, your histories. We became experts in everything you are." The map on the display zoomed in, showing the space around the Judgment Hall itself. A ring of red points surrounded the station, hidden in the void where no sensors had ever thought to look. "Right now," David said, "there are 47,000 human warships within firing range of this station. Our weapons are armed. Our shields are raised, and we are no longer asking for permission to exist." High Chancellor Mordrith's form stabilized, his shadows pulling tight around him like armor. "You would not dare. The combined fleets of the Council number in the millions. You cannot hope to win a war against us." "You are correct," David agreed. "We cannot win a war. That is why we are not starting one." He pressed another button on his device. Throughout the chamber, holographic displays activated, showing feeds from Council worlds across the galaxy. On every world, in every city, the same message was being broadcast. Human faces speaking in perfect local languages, delivering a simple statement: the human species withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We claim no Council territory. We seek no conflict. But we will no longer accept judgment from those who see us as lesser. Any species that wishes to deal with humanity fairly is welcome to contact us directly. Any species that attacks us will discover why we spent 3 centuries hiding." David Cole looked up at the High Chancellor one final time. "We are leaving now," he said. "Do not follow us. Do not threaten us. And do not make the mistake of thinking this is a bluff." He turned his back on the most powerful governing body in the galaxy and began walking toward the exit. His team followed in perfect formation. The frozen guards could only watch as the humans passed Dot at the door. David paused and looked over his shoulder. "One more thing," he said. "In approximately 6 hours, you are going to receive a distress call from your border colonies. Something is coming. Something that is not us. When it arrives, you will understand why we spent so long preparing." Then he stepped through the door and was gone in the chaos that followed. No one noticed the sensors at the edge of Council space going dark, one by one, as something vast and hungry began to move toward the light of civilization. The humans had not come to the Council to be judged. They had come to deliver a warning. And now, the galaxy would learn why 6 hours passed like a held breath. High Chancellor Mordrith stood in the war room of the Judgment Hall, surrounded by the military commanders of 100 species. The screens before them showed the Council's combined fleet, 2 million warships drawn from every corner of the galaxy, converging on the last known position of the human delegation. "They cannot have gone far," Admiral Voss of the Kellari said, his reptilian face twisted with barely contained fury. "My scouts will find them within the hour." "And when we do," Mordrith replied, his shadow form pulsing with dark energy, "we will show the galaxy what happens to species that forget their place." But even as he spoke, Mordrith felt something he had not experienced in 10,000 years. Doubt. The human ambassador's final words echoed in his mind. "Something is coming. Something that is not us." The communication console screamed to life, Every officer in the room turned toward the sound. It was a distress signal, broadcast on emergency frequencies that had not been used since the last Great War. The signal came from the border colonies, just as the human had predicted. "Report," Mordrith commanded. The officer at the console, a small creature with too many eyes, worked frantically at the controls. "Multiple contacts emerging from deep space, High Chancellor. Unknown configuration. Unknown origin. They are consuming the outer colonies." The main display flickered and changed. It showed a feed from a border world called Thesan Prime, home to 3 billion Council citizens. The sky above the planet was filled with shapes that defied description. They were not ships in any traditional sense. They were organic, massive, alive. They moved like predators, surrounding the world like wolves around wounded prey. Then they began to feed. Mordrith watched in silence as the creatures descended on Thesan Prime. They did not bomb the cities or land troops. They simply absorbed. Buildings, vehicles, people, everything was drawn upward into the hungry mass above. Within minutes, the surface of the planet was bare stone. "What are they?" Admiral Voss whispered. "The Hollow," said a voice from the doorway. Every head turned. The Vorolef ambassador, an ancient being named Theron, stood at the entrance to the war room. His species was the oldest in the Council, keepers of records that stretched back further than memory. He walked slowly to the main display, his ancient eyes fixed on the creatures consuming Thesan Prime. "We have records of them," Theron continued. "Incomplete, fragmentary, from a time before the Council existed. They came once before, 1,000,000 years ago, and they devoured everything in their path. How were they stopped?" Mordrith demanded. Theron turned to face the High Chancellor. "They were not stopped. They simply left. Something drove them away, but our records do not say what. Only that they promised to return when they were hungry again." The display updated. More contacts were appearing at the border. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of the organic nightmares emerging from the void between galaxies. "Our fleet," Admiral Voss said. "We must redeploy immediately." "Our fleet was designed to fight ships," Theron replied quietly. "How do you fight something that eats?" The war room fell silent. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Council had no answer. On the far side of the galaxy, aboard a ship that Council sensors could not detect, Ambassador David Cole stood before a wall of monitors showing the same terrible images. The human command vessel, named Prometheus, hung in the shadow of a dead moon, its presence hidden by technology 3 centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. "It has begun," said Admiral Catherine Wells, commander of the Hidden Fleet. She was a woman in her 60s, her hair white, her eyes hard as steel. "The Hollow are moving faster than our projections suggested." "They are always hungry," David replied. "They do not pause. They do not rest. They will consume the Council worlds one by one until nothing remains. And then they will come for us." "Yes," David turned from the monitors. "Which is why we revealed ourselves today. The Council needed to know the truth. We are not their enemy. We are their only hope." Catherine studied the ambassador's face. "You could have told them earlier, given them more time to prepare. Would they have listened?" David shook his head. "They would have seen our warning as a trick. They would have attacked us, wasted their fleet on a war against the wrong enemy. No, they needed to see the Hollow with their own eyes. They needed to feel true fear. And now we wait. The Council will realize they cannot fight this alone. They will come to us, eventually. And when they do, we will be ready." The monitors flickered. A new signal was being detected, broadcast on frequencies that only human equipment could receive. It came from Earth, from the bunker beneath the Alps, where Director Emma Foster coordinated humanity's true government. Ambassador Cole, Emma's voice said, we are receiving unusual readings from Site Zero. The artifact is active. David's calm expression finally cracked. Active? That should not be possible. The artifact has been dormant since we discovered it. It woke up 6 hours ago. The same moment the hollow emerged. It is transmitting something. A message, we think. We have not been able to decode it yet. Catherine stepped closer. What artifact? David, what is she talking about? David Cole was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of secrets kept for 300 years. When humanity first reached for the stars, he said, we found something buried beneath the ice of Europa. A structure, ancient beyond measurement. Dead, or so we thought. Inside, we found technology that should not exist. Technology that allowed us to build everything you see around you. He gestured at the advanced displays, the impossible engines, the weapons that could challenge the Council. But that was not all we found. There were records, warnings. The structure was built by a species that existed before the Council, before the Voroleth, before any civilization we know. They called themselves the Architects. And they left a message for whoever found them. What message? Catherine asked. David turned back to the monitors, where the hollow were consuming another world. They built the galaxy, he said. They created the species that would become the Council. They seeded life across 1,000 worlds. And then, 1,000,000 years ago, something came to destroy their work. The hollow. The Architects fought them and lost. But before they fell, they created one final weapon. A tool that could end the hollow forever. Where is it? They hid it. Somewhere in the galaxy, protected by puzzles that only their children could solve. David met Catherine's eyes. That is why they seeded life, Admiral. They were creating successors. Species that would grow and learn, and eventually be ready to find what they left behind. Catherine understood. The Council species. They are all descended from the Architects. Yes, but the Architects made a mistake. They created their children too well. The Council species grew powerful, but they also grew cruel. They forgot their origins. They built an empire based on domination rather than cooperation. The Architect's weapon requires unity to activate. A galaxy at war with itself can never use it. The implications hung in the air between them. That is why you revealed us today, Catherine said slowly. Not just to warn the Council, to begin uniting them. David nodded. The hollow cannot be defeated by force alone. They can only be stopped by the weapon the Architects left behind. And that weapon can only be found by a galaxy that learns to work together. The monitors showed the hollow spreading across Council space. A tide of hunger that nothing could stop. We have very little time, David said. And we have a lot of work to do. Far away, in the ruins of Thiessen Prime, a single transmission beacon activated. It broadcast a simple message, repeated endlessly, aimed at the heart of Council space. The message contained coordinates, and the coordinates pointed to Earth. The coordinates pointed to Earth, within hours. The message had spread across what remained of Council space. It appeared on military channels and civilian broadcasts, in the halls of power and the streets of dying worlds. No one knew where it came from. No one knew who sent it. But everyone understood what it meant. The hollow had a destination. And that destination was the human homeworld. High Chancellor Mordrith called an emergency session of the remaining Council leadership. Of the 847 species that had filled the Judgment Hall just days ago, only 412 remained. The others had been consumed, or had fled to the far edges of the galaxy, or had simply stopped responding to communications. We must attack Earth immediately, Admiral Voss declared. His reptilian scales had turned pale with stress. If the Hollow wants something on that planet, we must destroy it before they can reach it. Destroy it? Theron, the ancient Voroloth, shook his head slowly. You would give the Hollow exactly what they want. They are not heading to Earth to find something. They are heading there to prevent the humans from using it. Mordrith's shadow form flickered with confusion. Explain. The records I mentioned before, Theron said. I have studied them more closely. The architects built a weapon, hidden somewhere in this galaxy. A tool that could end the Hollow forever. But the weapon requires a key. A species with the proper genetic markers to activate it. The humans, Mordrith said slowly. Yes, the humans are different from the rest of us. We were created by the architects to populate the galaxy. But humans were created for another purpose. They are the key. The Hollow know this. That is why they are racing toward Earth. If they can consume humanity before the weapon is found, nothing will ever stop them. The war room fell silent. The species that had spent centuries looking down on humanity now faced an impossible truth. The future of the galaxy rested in human hands. Then we must protect them, Admiral Voss said. The words clearly caused him physical pain. We must send our fleets to defend Earth. Our fleets are scattered, Mordrith replied. Half our forces were consumed at the border. The rest are spread across 1,000 systems, trying to hold back the tide. By the time we gather enough ships to make a difference, Earth will already be under attack. Then contact the humans directly. Offer an alliance. Mordrith laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the chamber. I condemned their species to destruction 3 days ago. I called them criminals. I threatened to reduce their world to ash. Why would they ever trust us? A new voice spoke from the entrance to the war room. Because you have no choice. Ambassador David Cole walked into the chamber as if he owned it. He was alone, unarmed, and completely calm. The guards raised their weapons, but Mordrith waved them down. Killing the human now would accomplish nothing. You could not resist, Mordrith said. You had to come and see us beg. I came to offer terms, David replied. Not to gloat. The Hollow will reach Earth in 72 hours. When they do, they will find our entire civilization ready for them. We have been preparing for this moment since we found the architect ruins 300 years ago. Preparing how? Admiral Voss demanded. What can you possibly do against creatures that consume entire worlds? David smiled. We have the weapon the architects left behind. The chamber erupted. Species that had been on the edge of despair suddenly found hope. They shouted questions, demands, pleas for information. David waited until the noise died down before continuing. The weapon is not what you expect, he said. It is not a gun or a bomb. It is a frequency, a signal that resonates with the Hollow's biology and forces them back into dormancy. The architects discovered it after centuries of war, but the signal requires enormous power to broadcast. Power that no single species can generate alone. Theron understood first. You need us. You need the combined energy output of every remaining council world. Yes, our technology is advanced, but even we cannot power the signal alone. We need every power station, every reactor, every ship in the galaxy contributing to a single broadcast. The Hollow must hear the signal simultaneously, everywhere at once. If even one fragment of their consciousness escapes, they will eventually return. Mordrith stepped forward, his shadow form pressing against David like a physical weight. And what do you want in return? What price will humanity demand for saving us? David met the High Chancellor's gaze without flinching. Nothing, he said. Not the single word hung in the air. Nothing? Mordrith repeated. When this is over, humanity will return to our territory. We will not claim council space. We will not demand tribute or apologies or recognition. We will simply go home, and you will be free to rebuild however you choose. I do not believe you. No species acts without self-interest. David reached into his jacket and pulled out a small holographic projector. He activated it, and the image of a woman appeared. She was old, with white hair and kind eyes, dressed in simple clothes that held no mark of rank or authority. "This is my grandmother," David said. "She died 20 years ago, on Earth, in a small house by the ocean. She never traveled to the stars. She never knew about the Council, or the Hollow, or any of this. But before she died, she told me something I have never forgotten." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had dismissed humanity as insignificant. "She said that the measure of a person is not what they take from the world, but what they leave behind. She said that true strength is not domination, but service. She said that the day humanity forgets, this is the day we stop being human." David deactivated the projector. "We are not saving you because we want power," he said. "We are saving you because it is the right thing to do. That is all the reason we need." The chamber was silent. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council had nothing to say. Finally, Theron stepped forward. The ancient Vorlyth bowed his head, a gesture of respect that his species had not offered anyone in 10,000 years. "Tell us what you need," he said. "We will follow your lead." David nodded. "We have 72 hours. I suggest we begin immediately." Far from the Judgment Hall, on the cold surface of Europa, Director Emma Foster stood before the architect ruins that had changed everything. The structure was awake now, glowing with energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. Symbols that had been dark for 1,000,000 years blazed with light. Beside her stood Dr. Marcus Webb, the scientist who had spent 30 years studying the ruins. "It knows they are coming," Marcus said. "The Hollow. The structure is responding to their presence. Can we control it?" Emma asked. Marcus shook his head. "We do not control it. We never did. The architects designed this place to activate when the time was right. We were just the caretakers, keeping it safe until it was needed." The symbols on the wall shifted, forming patterns that Emma almost understood. "What is it saying?" Marcus studied the display for a long moment. When he looked up, his face was pale. "It is saying that the signal alone will not be enough. The Hollow are too strong now, too numerous. They have been feeding for days, growing more powerful with every world they consume. Then what do we do?" Marcus pointed to a new pattern forming on the wall. It showed a human figure surrounded by light, connected to the structure by threads of energy. "Someone has to go inside," he said. "Someone has to merge with the architect technology and guide the signal personally. Amplify it with their own consciousness. Who? Anyone with the right genetic markers. Anyone descended from the original human population." Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. "Anyone willing to sacrifice themselves." Emma Foster looked at the glowing structure, at the symbols that promised salvation at an impossible price. Somewhere in the void, the Hollow were getting closer, and time was running out. 48 hours remained. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history gathered around Earth. Ships from 400 species filled the space between Earth and the Moon, a wall of metal and light that stretched across the void. Human vessels moved among them like shepherds guiding a flock, their advanced technology coordinating the defense that would decide the fate of everything. Admiral Catherine Wells stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the fleet take formation through the main viewport. In her 30 years of service, she had never imagined anything like this. Former enemies flying alongside each other. Species that had been at war for centuries, now sharing targeting data and shield frequencies. The threat of extinction had done what diplomacy never could. "Final positions confirmed," her tactical officer reported. All 7,000 vessels are linked to the broadcast network. Power generation is at 87% of required levels. That is not enough, Catherine said quietly. No, Admiral. We are still short. Even with every ship contributing, we cannot generate the signal strength needed to reach all the hollows simultaneously. Catherine had known this for hours. The math was simple. The galaxy was too big, the hollow too spread out. Their signal would reach most of the creatures, but fragments would survive. And fragments could grow. What about the planetary stations? She asked. The surface installations we asked the Council to build? Construction is proceeding, but they will not be ready in time. We needed weeks. We have hours. Catherine closed her eyes. There had to be a solution. 3 centuries of preparation could not end in failure. Because they were 12% short of power, her communication console activated. Ambassador David Cole's face appeared on the screen, transmitting from the Council's mobile command center on the Judgment Hall station. Catherine, David said, we have a problem. I am aware. We are short on power. That is not the problem I meant. David's expression was grave. High Chancellor Mordrith is missing. He disappeared from the station 2 hours ago, along with a small group of his most loyal followers. Catherine felt ice form in her stomach. Where did he go? We do not know. But we intercepted a partial transmission before he left. He was talking about taking control of the weapon, using it to destroy the Hollow and humanity at the same time. That is not possible. The weapon does not work that way. Mordrith does not know that. He believes the architect technology can be modified, turned from a targeted signal into a blast that will kill everything in range. David's voice hardened. He would rather see humanity destroyed than saved by us. Catherine stared at the screen. Even now, facing extinction, the Council's leader could not set aside his hatred. Some minds were simply too broken to heal. Find him, she said, before he does something we cannot undo. On Europa, Director Emma Foster watched the architect's structure pulse with light. Dr. Marcus Webb worked frantically at a console that had not existed until the structure created it, studying data that scrolled across screens in languages no living human could read. The structure is ready, Marcus said, but we still need someone to enter it, someone to guide the signal. Emma had spent the last 2 days trying to find another solution. Every simulation, every calculation, every desperate attempt to modify the technology had failed. The architects had designed the system for a reason. The signal needed a living consciousness to direct it, to make countless tiny adjustments as it swept across the galaxy. No computer was sophisticated enough. No automation could handle the complexity. Someone had to sacrifice themselves. I will do it, Emma said. Marcus stopped working. He looked at her with eyes full of pain. Emma, no. You have led this project for 20 years. You have given everything to humanity. You cannot also give your life. Who else? Emma asked. The genetic requirements are specific. Only a handful of humans have the right markers. Most of them are soldiers or scientists that we cannot spare. I am the logical choice. Logic has nothing to do with it. You are afraid, and you are trying to be brave. But bravery is not the same as necessity. A new voice spoke from the entrance to the chamber. He is right. Emma turned. A young woman stood in the doorway, dressed in the uniform of the Prometheus crew. She was small, with dark hair and quiet eyes that held more wisdom than her years should allow. Her name was Lieutenant Maya Torres, and she had served as Catherine Wells' personal aide for the past 5 years. Lieutenant, Emma said, you should not be here. This facility is restricted. I know. Maya walked forward, her steps slow but certain. I also know what you are planning. I intercepted the communications when I was coordinating fleet logistics. She looked at the glowing structure. My genetic markers match. I checked before I came. Emma shook her head. You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. So does everyone else in this galaxy. Maya met Emma's eyes. Director, I grew up on a colony world. When I was 7 years old, Council soldiers came and took everything my family had. They called it tribute. They left us with nothing. For years, I hated them. I dreamed of revenge. She turned to look at the structure, at the swirling light that promised both salvation and death. But when I joined the fleet, I learned something. Hatred only creates more hatred. The Council hurt us because they were afraid, and their fear made them cruel. If we respond with more cruelty, we become them. She reached out and touched the surface of the structure. It hummed beneath her fingers. This is a chance to break the cycle, to save everyone, even our enemies, even the beings that hurt us. Maya smiled, a small, sad expression. I cannot think of a better way to spend my life. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to find some reason to refuse. But she saw the certainty in Maya's eyes, and she knew that nothing she said would change the young woman's mind. It will not hurt, Marcus said quietly. The structure will absorb your consciousness. You will become part of it, guiding the signal from within. You will not die, exactly. You will become something else, something larger. Will I remember? Maya asked. Will I still be me? Marcus hesitated. We do not know. The architects left no records of what happens to the person inside. You might retain your identity. You might dissolve into the signal. We simply cannot say. Maya nodded slowly. Then I choose to believe I will remember. I choose to believe that some part of me will always exist, out there among the stars, watching over the galaxy I helped save. She turned to Emma one final time. Tell Admiral Wells, I am sorry I did not say goodbye. Tell her it was an honor to serve. Then she walked into the light. The structure erupted with energy. Marcus grabbed Emma and pulled her back as waves of power swept through the chamber. On every screen, data cascaded in torrents too fast to read. The signal was charging, building, preparing to broadcast. Emma's communicator screamed with incoming messages. She answered the first one. Director Foster. It was David Cole, his voice tight with urgency. We found Mordrith. He is heading for Europa in a stolen cruiser. He has enough firepower to destroy the structure before the signal can launch. Emma looked up. Through the facility's transparent ceiling, she could see a point of light growing brighter. A ship descending fast. Mordrith was coming, and the signal was not ready. In orbit. Admiral Catherine Wells watched the tactical display as Mordrith's cruiser broke through the defensive perimeter. Her ship scrambled to intercept, but the Chancellor had timed his approach perfectly. He would reach Europa before they could stop him. All vessels, target that cruiser, Catherine ordered. Fire at will. Weapons blazed across the void. Mordrith's ship twisted and spun, its shields absorbing hit after hit. It was damaged, trailing fire, but still flying. He is going to reach the surface, her tactical officer reported. Catherine made a decision. She grabbed the helm controls and pushed them forward. The Prometheus lurched, its engines screaming as she drove the massive vessel directly into Mordrith's path. Admiral, what are you doing? The tactical officer grabbed his console as the ship shook. Something stupid, Catherine replied. And necessary. The two ships collided. On Europa, Emma Foster felt the impact through the ground. She looked up to see two burning shapes falling from the sky, tangled together, spiraling toward the ice fields miles from the structure. Catherine, she whispered, but there was no time to grieve. The structure was glowing brighter than ever. Maya's consciousness was merging with the architect technology, preparing to launch the signal that would save the galaxy. Emma ran to the main console. She still had work to do. The signal would launch in 6 hours, and somewhere in the wreckage on the ice, 2 enemies lay dying together, neither willing to let the other win. The Hollow arrived at dawn. They came from every direction at once, a tide of organic nightmares that blotted out the stars. Millions of the creatures, each one larger than a city, hungry beyond comprehension. They swept toward Earth like a wave of darkness, and the combined fleet of 400 species rose to meet them. The battle was chaos. Council ships fired everything they had, pouring energy into the advancing horde. Human vessels wove between the larger craft, their superior technology allowing them to strike targets that others could not reach. For every hollow creature that fell, 10 more took its place. The line bent. It buckled. It began to break. Ambassador David Cole stood on the bridge of the Judgment Hall station, coordinating the defense from the mobile command center. His tactical displays showed red spreading across every screen. They were losing. Signal status, he demanded. Charging at 93%, an officer reported. The structure on Europa is almost ready. 3 hours until full power. We do not have 3 hours. David watched a cluster of council ships disappear under a wave of hollow forms. We have minutes. On Europa, Director Emma Foster fought her own battle. The facility shook constantly as hollow organisms broke through the planetary defense grid and began landing on the surface. Human soldiers held defensive positions around the structure, but they were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. How long? Emma shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Dr. Marcus Webb checked his console. 2 hours, 47 minutes. The signal cannot launch early. Maya needs time to fully integrate with the system. Then we hold for 2 hours and 47 minutes. The doors at the far end of the chamber burst open. Hollow organisms poured through, their forms shifting and terrible. Emma raised her weapon and fired, joining the soldiers in a desperate last stand. Miles away, Admiral Catherine Wells opened her eyes. She was lying in wreckage, her body broken in a dozen places. The crash had destroyed both ships, scattering debris across the frozen plain. Through the fractured viewport of what remained of the Prometheus, she could see the battle raging in the sky above. Movement caught her attention. Mordrith was dragging himself from the ruins of his own vessel. His shadow form was dim, barely visible, but he was still alive. He saw her watching. "You could have destroyed me from orbit," he rasped. "Why sacrifice yourself?" Catherine coughed, tasting blood. "Because some things are worth more than winning." Mordrith crawled closer. His form was failing, pieces of shadow dissolving into the cold air. "I have ruled the council for 10,000 years, he said. "I have conquered worlds. I have crushed species beneath my heel. I was the most powerful being in the galaxy." His voice cracked. "And in the end, I am dying in the ice because a human would not let me win. You still do not understand." Catherine forced herself to speak, even as her vision began to fade. "We never wanted to win. We wanted to survive. We wanted our children to have a future. That is all anyone wants." Mordrith was silent for a long moment. Above them, the sky burned with the light of dying ships. "I was afraid," he said finally. "When your species first came to us, I saw something in you that terrified me. You were weak, but you were not broken. You had hope, real hope, the kind that does not fade. I knew that if you were allowed to grow, you would become something greater than us. So you tried to destroy us." "Yes." Mordrith's form flickered. "And now the galaxy burns because of my fear. I should have been a leader. Instead, I was a tyrant." Catherine felt the cold spreading through her body. She did not have long. It is not too late, she whispered. The signal still needs more power. Every ship is contributing, but it is not enough. Mordrith looked at her. For the first time, his alien features showed something that might have been understanding. My form, he said slowly. I am a shadow being. My species generates energy simply by existing. If I were to release all of it at once, ... you would die. I am already dying. Mordrith rose, his shadow form gathering the last of its strength. Perhaps this is how I redeem myself. Perhaps not. But I will not spend my final moments cowering in the ruins of my own failure. He reached out one dark hand toward Catherine. Thank you, he said, for showing me what true strength looks like. Then he rose into the sky, a column of shadow ascending toward the battle above. David Cole saw the energy signature before anyone understood what it meant. A massive power source was rising from Europa, broadcasting on all frequencies, adding its strength to the signal network. What is that? He demanded. Theron, the ancient Vorov, was studying the readings with wonder on his face. It is Mordrith, he said. He is feeding himself into the system. His entire life force, everything he is, everything he was. He is giving it to the signal. The numbers on the display began to change. 93%, 95, 98. We are going to make it, David breathed. On Europa, Emma Foster watched the power readings spike. The structure blazed with light, brighter than the sun, brighter than anything she had ever seen. Maya's consciousness, merged with the architect technology, reached out across the galaxy. And the signal launched. It was not a sound or a light. It was something deeper, something that existed between frequencies, in the spaces where physics broke down. It swept across the galaxy in an instant, touching every hollow creature simultaneously. The effect was immediate. The organisms stopped moving. Their forms, which had been constantly shifting and growing, suddenly went rigid. Then, slowly, they began to drift apart. The hunger that had driven them for 1,000,000 years simply disappeared, leaving empty shells that dissolved into cosmic dust. Across the galaxy, cheers erupted on 1,000 worlds. The hollow were gone. David Cole slumped against his console, exhausted beyond words. Around him, officers from dozens of species embraced and wept. Enemies who had tried to kill each other hours ago now held each other like family. On Europa, Emma Foster walked through the ruins of the facility. The structure was dark now, its purpose fulfilled. Maya Torres was gone, her consciousness scattered across the galaxy, part of the signal that had saved everyone. But somehow, Emma could feel her presence. A warmth in the back of her mind. A whisper that sounded like gratitude. She found Catherine Wells' body on the ice plane, still and cold. Beside her, Mordrith's remains had dissolved into shadow, leaving only a faint outline on the frozen ground. Emma knelt and placed her hand on Catherine's chest. We did it, she said softly. We actually did it. 1 year later, the new Galactic Assembly met for the first time. It was held on Earth, in a structure built specifically for this purpose. Representatives from every surviving species gathered in a chamber designed for equality. No thrones, no tiers. Just a circular table where everyone sat at the same level. Ambassador David Cole opened the session. 1 year ago, we stood on the edge of extinction. We had been enemies for centuries. We had hurt each other in ways that can never be fully healed. But when the moment came, when everything was at stake, we chose to fight together. He looked around the table, meeting the eyes of beings who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant. Today, we are not here to form a council. Councils demand obedience. They create hierarchies and enforce submission. That is the old way, the way that nearly destroyed us all. David stood and walked to the center of the chamber. We are here to form a partnership. A community of equals, working together not because we have to, but because we choose to. Every species at this table has something to offer. Every species has wisdom and strength that others lack. Our differences are not weaknesses. They are our greatest asset. Theron, now the oldest surviving leader in the galaxy, rose to stand beside David. The Vorolith records speak of the architects, he said. They created us because they believed that diversity was the key to survival. They knew that no single species could face every challenge alone. They seeded this galaxy with life, so that when the darkness came, we would have each other. He placed his ancient hand on David's shoulder. They would be proud of what we have become. The assembly voted unanimously to adopt the Charter of Unity. No more tribute. No more conquest. No more judging species as superior or inferior. Just cooperation, respect, and the shared goal of building something better than what came before. After the ceremony, David walked alone through the gardens that surrounded the assembly building. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the distance, he could see ships rising toward the stars, carrying representatives home to share the news with their people. A voice spoke behind him. "You actually pulled it off." David turned. A holographic figure stood among the flowers, translucent and faintly glowing. It took him a moment to recognize her. Maya? Lieutenant Maya Torres smiled. Or at least, the fragment of her consciousness that now existed within the Architect Network smiled. "I told you I would remember," she said. "I am still here. Part of the signal, part of everything. I can see the whole galaxy now. Every world. Every species. It is beautiful, David. More beautiful than I ever imagined." David felt tears forming in his eyes. "We could not have done it without you. You could not have done it without each other." Maya's form flickered. That was the point, was it not? The architects knew that survival requires sacrifice, but they also knew that sacrifice means nothing without connection. We saved the galaxy because we cared about each other, even our enemies, even the ones who hurt us. She began to fade, her consciousness spreading back across the stars. "Keep caring," she whispered. "That is the only thing that matters." Then she was gone. David stood alone in the garden, watching the stars appear one by one. Somewhere out there, humanity's hidden fleet was returning home, their 3-century mission finally complete. Somewhere out there, the last hollow fragments were dissolving into nothing, their ancient hunger finally at peace. And somewhere out there, Maya Torres watched over them all. A guardian made of light and love and hope. The galaxy had been saved, but more importantly, it had been united for the first time in 1,000,000 years. The children of the architects were finally working together, and this time they would not fail.